Hi, how are you?
So good. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. It's Alicia Crespin.
Yes, correct. Crespin. Yes.
Oh, that's so fun that I got it right off the hop. How are you doing
Look at
today?
that. Girl, I'm good. I'm good. It's 8 o'clock here in California. So I'm just got my
Oh
daughter
my
ready for school.
gosh.
Got my daughter ready for school before I go into my own actual work. So it's great. And I'm here with you.
Oh my gosh, we're in Toronto, Canada, and it is freezing, and we're getting ready for a massive snowstorm tomorrow, apparently, with freezing rain. So enjoy the sunshine that it doesn't have snow all over it. I'm so jealous of everyone in California, let me tell you.
I appreciate that. It's so great to
We're
see you, by the
so
way. I
it's
followed you for such a long time. So I'm so honored to be here. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited you're here because hilariously, I'm my daughter who we have so many kids and one's 16 and then the little one's like 9.
Hmm.
And I was driving her and it's very rare I have her in the car alone. And she's like, Mom, we're learning about puberty in school.
There
And
you go.
and then I'm like, and I was like, oh my God, I've never had the talk with you. Like we talk about it. I feel like
Oh.
all the older kids know too much. And then I forgot I
Mhm.
have to keep talking. This, she was like, they say words. I'm like penis. And she's like, oh my God. I was like,
Oh my
oh my
gosh.
God, we have so much to do. So this is such a timely conversation. You have over 15 years of corporate strategy and marketing experience. You empower teams, especially women, and you accomplish this through mentorship programs. You're
Mhm.
known for saying it like it is and talking about uncomfortable topics. The Tea, The Talk is her first book, and you are embarking on a new path that will hopefully make the next generation the best one yet.
Yes.
Okay, so The Tea. I love this because it's conversations with other parents about their stories of the talk.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And it's funny because my daughter's 15, so I'm actively going through all of this too, but there's so many amazing resources, right? Like you guys have amazing experts on the show and they're all doctors, therapists. And one thing for me and some of the other moms that I had talked to was it was like I want realness. Like I can read all this stuff or it's like sit your kid down, do this, but it's like I want to know the feelings and like the uncomfortableness that you feel, like the awkwardness, those like questions that randomly come up and you're like, "Oh shit, how am I supposed to answer this?" And I just kind of felt that that was missing, and so that's why I decided to do something a little different. I mean, this is my first
It
book, first
it
thing, just try to
It
do
it
something
is
different.
it is it is missing. It is missing, and because it's an uncomfortable topic to talk about, and I feel like as adults we still are like, oh my God, will you do this for my kid? Because I don't want to do this. Like I do not like. It's such an awkward place to where to start because they're like start young.
Mhm.
Um, when you decided to write it, like where did you start? Like where do you even begin?
I know. So, it actually took me about a year to write the book, crazy enough. So I accelerated the process. I'm all about that. Like, how can I get it done quick as possible? But I just started asking my friends. I was actually so late talking to my daughter about the sex talk, and I never got it when I was young. So I didn't even really know how to go about it, how to start. But the funny thing is like I'm able to talk to her about periods. Like I'm able to sit there and like change my tampon, whatever it may be, right in front of her. But sex specifically, like that's where it was just like, oh my God, like uncomfortable. What do I say? What do I do? So I just started asking my mom friends, and sometimes they're like, I didn't give it, or I kind of beat around the bush, or I just kind of talked about like sexual intercourse only, which I also think that's a big miss right now, just kind of talking to so many parents. And so I just started asking around, and one of my friends said this hilarious story, and I was like, oh shit, this would be so funny if this was a book. And it just started. It just was like, let me just do it. And so I asked like so many women. I interviewed 40 women, but I didn't only interview moms. I interviewed like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds because I wanted to know like Gen Z what they're actually feeling right now in this situation and dealing with sex. Being a teenager, which is what's happening. So I wanted to get all perspectives.
What do they want? Like what do the 18 and 19-year-olds wish that their parents had done?
So a lot of them wish that they had a safe space, honestly, with their parents, that their parents just didn't make it weird and awkward, but they actually do really want to have the conversation. Like they want their mom to tell them their experience, like, and they want honesty. And I think they just feel like it was very shamed or hushed in their house, right? And it's not anything really negative on us, but it's just something that is still stigmatized, which is crazy, right? I mean, we're such a sexualized culture, but talking about sex and the real stuff with our kids is still so like stigmatized, and there's not really a way to do it. So that's the number one thing that they want. Like they want honesty. They want to talk as like adult to adult, even though they're a teen, and they want that safe space. And it's funny also.
How do you like? Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead. Go. You're good.
No, what were you gonna say? No, it's funny. It's funny. It's funny. I want to hear it because I'm so like, oh my gosh, yes. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to say it's also, I interviewed a few women who were also lesbian, and they had to hide it. And so that's also, and also women who are sexually abused, right? So there's so many dynamics when it comes to just you as like a sexual being. And it all starts with how you were or were not talked about it in your household. So it's just, it's crazy. It's phenomenal, actually.
What's the average age of the women you interviewed that they did or didn't like they did talk to the kids about? Like what was
Yeah.
did you find like common?
I did. So most of them started like before the period, before the like when they noticed signs that their daughter was going to start their period. And I feel like that is a much easier conversation to have now. But some of the women, are 30s, 40s, and they're like, my mom never talked to me about that. I thought I was going to die, right? Like, there's also those stories as well.
Yeah.
So most of them started their period, but the thing is they didn't talk about actual like sex. They're just like, when you get a little older, when you fall in love with somebody, you're going to want to have sex, and it's important to protect yourself because you don't want to get pregnant. Like everything is so consequential based. It's not like the feelings behind it,
Okay.
like the why. And I felt like that was like what
Oh
was
yeah.
missing. And I don't know, what about you? Like did you have the talk when you were young? Like did your mom give you the talk?
I don't, I think it's really helpful when you have old, maybe not, but when you have older siblings, I feel like when you have a lot of kids in the house, the conversation is a little bit more prevalent and prominent because boyfriends come in, girlfriends come
Right.
in. I think it is, I don't think we had the conversation. I think boys have a lot more, like, oh, here's some condom. Like it's kind
Right.
of like more of a joking, like make sure you
Yes.
use your condoms tonight and
Exactly. Yes.
like wrap it up rather than
Mhm.
the conversation of like in I don't know, in Canada, in Ontario, it's very prevalent about like consent.
Yes.
Sort of like how do these people feel? What like a lot of which is almost negative because it's a lot about uh everything's around like are they okay and like
Right.
you can never
Yes.
trust that they're okay, so like you
Mhm.
can't make out when you're drinking, you can't like there's so many can'ts, and a
Yes.
lot of it's like ask every time you make a move, every time you
Mhm.
so a lot of fear based
Yes,
unfortunately
fear-based,
still
consequential. Mhm.
because of what can happen on the flip
Exactly.
side, especially for the boys if they are to do something and then someone regrets it or they weren't sober or
Mhm.
there's so many things as parents we're like, oh my God, there's so much more now than just,
Right.
don't get pregnant. And so I think the conversations are still a miss because there is so much information now and it's so much about are they okay and are you okay? And then making sure you're okay, and you can't even be okay if you're in a relationship. You have to still make sure they're okay.
Right.
So
Yes.
I think that in terms of like the conversations, we try to be really open, but will our kids come to us with questions, like honest questions, like, I don't know if I'm ready to have sex yet. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know if there's so many kids that I think they're also fearful of it getting back to the other kids in the house because
Yeah, that's
there's
good
almost too
too.
many kids. You know what I
Yeah, I can
mean?
totally see. Oh, 100%. I can totally see that. And I think that's where it's like if you didn't say anything to your kid about it from the jump, like from the beginning, it's like how do you expect them to then ask you those questions, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm seeing, again, out of just the 40 women that I interviewed is like my mom never said to me like, hey, um or a couple did, actually a couple did. I have a really good examples of a few, but most of them were like, my mom never said to me like, um wanting to have sex with someone is normal. Like it's normal. Like you're going to have all these feelings and that's something that you think that you want to do, But
Mhm.
what you need to take a second of is like, is this what I actually want? Like, can I advocate for myself that like I actually want this and I'm not being pressured? Or I have this little doubt or there's something in my gut that's making me stop and say no. And so they just do it, right? Like they just do it. Like 90% of the women that I interviewed regretted their first time, which is astounding. But I know it's so true, even just talking to other women that I haven't interviewed. And I'm like, that's a problem. Like, this is a problem, whether it's
Yeah, it is.
right. And even to what you just said, the boys, like, that's why I want to talk to men so bad. That's like my next thing on my next thing is like, they're literally taught so differently. Just like, like you said, here's condoms, don't get a girl pregnant. But are they taught about like, it's going to hurt the girl, like she's in this whole emotional state, she has these feelings where she's questioning herself and she's going to be like tense and tight, but then it's like, would you really talk to your kids about that? That's where it's like this weird, right, like balance of what makes you comfortable, uncomfortable, and where do you actually like push the conversation to.
Oh my gosh, I know. And then also it's like you don't want to scare them and you want to make sure it's the
Right.
right age of what you're explaining to them
Yes.
because I think a lot of parents misconceptions are that they don't know anything, but the information they do know and you don't know where they're learning it from. Obviously the internet and their friends is so um they download so much and
So
so
much.
you feel like if you kind of go with them like, well, this is what a man and a woman do, they're kind of like, oh my God,
Right.
you are so old. Like
Yeah.
my friends do this all the time.
All the
Like, a
time.
lot of them are having sex in grade 9 and 10. And
Yeah.
the parents would be mind blown that it
Mind
was
blown.
happening.
I
And
know.
but the trains left the station and they haven't had a time to have that conversation because things change so quickly in a teen's world
I
and
know.
you think they're not ready or they would never. I can't tell you how many parents were like, we hear be like, oh my God, my kid would never, they're not even
Never.
close to that. And I'm like, you're delusional. Like you're literally delusional.
That's why I always ask the first question, like, would you rather your child learn about sex through social media, through their friends, older siblings, right? And again, that's not the fault of the older sibling. It's just they're like, to your point, it's around the household. Or it's like, are you gonna like just sit back and like swallow your own embarrassment and nervousness to actually say it? And I think that's the biggest thing is like we literally are standing in our own way. And it's funny, like the more women I was talking to, like the more for me, I was like, okay, I can do this shit. Like I can do this. Like I'm a grown woman. I'm strong. I can do this. And that's why I was just like, there's something so like fascinating about this. Even you guys, like sharing your stories, sharing your hard stuff, the funny stuff. It just gives someone a little bit more confidence. And the more real you can
I
say it,
know.
right, it does make a dramatic difference. And so that's just what's been so inspiring, and what I'm really trying to do is just give them a little bit more comfortability and let them know that they're not alone, because it's hard, it's so hard,
What
so hard.
what does your daughter think? What does your daughter think of the book and the conversations and like
Yeah.
everything?
So like I said, I was super late with her. I literally talked to her about sex a year ago before I started this book, and she's
I
14. So late. I was so late. I again talked to her everything about period, boyfriends in general, but not actually about sex. And so I had so I had the talk with her, which was good but short, but it was good. I finally like convinced myself to do it. Right. We went on
and
a
the
walk.
talk's just like a penis goes into the vagina and then you like does it get down to like ejaculation? Like did you get into all that?
So since my daughter was older and she already had sex ed, like she already had a good base of it. And she had like a friend that was a little bit more, fast than her, I would say. And so
Yeah.
she already kind of said some things here and there, my daughter, where I'm like, oh shit, she already knows. So, and I know she already knows, but I still can't freaking say it. Like, why can I not say it? So I took her out on a walk, and I was like, all right, this is it. Like, it's just me and her. Like, I'm not facing her. I think that is actually another big thing is like, you're not like facing your kid. Like you guys are doing something else, driving in a car, whatever it may be. And I'm like, all right, we got to have the talk today. And she literally stopped walking. Like this girl actually stopped walking, and she's like, no, mom. I'm like, get over here. We're talking. So I was like, look, you're about to go into high school, and I'm like, this is really important and we need to talk about this. And I'm like, and I'm sorry that I haven't brought this up before. And I'm like, it's literally me. Like, I'm just shy, awkward, embarrassed to talk about this, but I know it's important. So I want to like start this conversation with us. And I'm like sweating, girl. I am like sweating. I'm like nervous, like all this stuff. And I'm like, so like I'm like, I know you know about sex, right? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, do you know about all things about sex? I'm like, obviously, like, sperm, uterus. She's like, oh yeah, mom, I learned about all that, reproductive system, blah blah blah. So that's kind of how I started it, just to see like where her head was at. And then I'm like, what about oral sex? And she like looked at me and she's like, yeah, I know what that is. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, I'm like, we called it like a blowjob. And I'm literally like laughing and in my head thinking, like, did I just freaking say blowjob to my child? Like this, I'm like, it's
I'm
crazy.
dying. I'm actually sweating for you right
Yes,
now because I can imagine you're trying to be serious, but you're like, okay, anyways, then there's the blowjob, and she's like,
right.
oh my God, mom.
And I was like, because the reason why I wanted to make sure to bring that up is because everybody is doing blowjobs, like fingering, all that stuff at that age. And it's like nobody talks about that. They only literally talk about sexual intercourse, but so many other things can happen. So I wanted to make sure like she was clear of like boundaries about that, like blowjobs, oral sex. And I actually said the word fingering, which was again, like I was just like calm. I'm like, you
Wait,
calm
what
down.
else would you call it?
I don't know, but it's
What
just
else would you call it?
I think that's all you call it, but to
I
say
know, but
it,
I don't think there's a medical term for fingering.
there isn't. I don't
I
think there
don't
is.
think,
Touching?
and like they know what it is the minute you say, like, it's like what it's
Right.
like. No, there's no medical term, I don't
No,
think,
no,
unless
it's
I'll Google one, but no.
yeah. And I'm just like in my head while I'm saying this, I'm like, oh my God, I just said fingering out loud. But to like my 14-year-old daughter. But it's like the more I started to say it, like I was like calming down. I'm like, all right, I got this. Like, and she's like looking at me, but she's answering the questions back, right? And that's what I'm really trying to do is like engage her in dialogue. So I would be like, I was like, I just want to make sure that like these are all progressive steps to sex. And I was like, obviously, like, there's a rule in our house where she cannot date until she's 16. We made that rule a while ago. And I'm like, but you're going to have crushes. You're going to like boys. You're going to think they're so cute. You're going to get these feelings inside you. And I'm like, and that's totally okay. Like I was the same way. I'm like, I had crushes forever. And I'm like, I still think people are cute right now, even though I'm married, I'm like, it's just what it is. And I'm like, but like you yourself need to know that you're okay with that next step. And I'm like, so what I want you to like start to think about is like the self-respect and the self-worth. And like, is this guy lucky enough to be able to kiss me? And I'm like, that change in narrative is what I want you to think of. Like, oh my God, don't think, oh my God, he's kissing me. Like, I'm so lucky. Like, no,
I'm so lucky.
yes, it should be the other way. Like, that guy is lucky enough to kiss me. Like, I'm allowing him in my presence to do that. And it's like things like that that I've like tried to instill with her for a while. Like I'm a confident, strong woman. So like I've tried to really put that in her from since she was young, but like in sex specifically, because they're so overwhelmed with emotions, it's like, how do you get them to stop? Right? Like just to stop and have a
And
thought.
also hookup
Yes,
culture for I think that parents don't know like they should definitely read your book because hookup culture is more prevalent than dating right now. Like
yes,
hookup
it is.
culture is it's like we used to date and have crushes and you'd make out like but you'd usually be seeing the person but for that person to go make out with seven other people the
It's
next
crazy.
4 weeks would be unheard of. And not only is it like normal and girls are doing it too. It's not just one way, but it's kind of like the norm. It's where they like go and it's like, oh, they hooked up with me this weekend. They're hooking up with that person next weekend. And
Oh
it's a
yeah,
known fact. And
it
if
is.
if you guys really like each other, you might start like dating, not just seeing each other. Like you hook up, then you talk, then you see each other, then you start
Exactly.
dating. I'm
It's
like,
opposite.
that is like
It's
insanity
insane.
of how long this process is.
It's crazy. And like the Gen Zers that I was interviewing, they describe it as like, I just want to rip off the band-aid and get it done with. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes, I've heard of
Yeah,
people just wanting to get it over with,
get
so
over
they're
it.
not like so then they can really begin to like choose. It's like let me just do this, so I'm
Yes.
like done with it. Like in parks and stuff, like
Right. I know.
in ravines, and like I'm just gonna have sex with them because it's just done then.
Yes. And a couple women that again, Gen Zers, it's actually so sad because porn, which I know you had an episode on porn too, like everyone is saying that boys are literally obsessed with porn. And again, I get it. It's accessible, right? It's like literally right at your fingertips. Before you used to have to like go sneak in, right? Sneak your parents' stuff, whatever it may
And
be.
at least it was a magazine. Like
Right.
at least it was a magazine, a
Yes.
picture. It wasn't like videos of actors.
And the crazy, freaky, like the most craziest stuff. And so a couple of these girls had told me, and women, I call them girl, a couple of these women had told me, like, she was I would like catch my boyfriend, watching porn. All they watch it in class, and she's like, and they watch the crazy stuff, like the most craziest stuff. And a couple of them had told me, like, when we first had sex, they were actually like upset because like I wasn't like the girls in the porn. Like I'm not sitting there
Yes,
moaning. And I'm like, how fucked up is that? Like, I'm like,
very.
where are the parents of these boys? Like, why are parents of boys not talking about stuff like this more frequently and honestly? That's why I really want to
Because they
talk to
don't
like,
know they don't know their kids are doing it. They can't
no,
imagine. They
but it's
can't
so
imagine that's
crazy.
even on the internet.
It's so crazy. And so, like, in one
It's
of my videos, I had told parents, I was like, 69, right? I think you even talked about this once. I'm like, every kid knows what 69 is. And if you hush it and be like, don't talk about
yep.
that, like, what do you think they're going to do? Google it. And there's videos. There's
Well,
literally everything is right there. Videos. And I'm like, what is going on? What's happening?
even the bigger thing that we learned from one of the experts is like if parents aren't having the conversation, there is a lot of shame, like you said before. And I'll never forget one of our kids. This was a few years ago, but he was on like a Roblox YouTube video or something, like doing something with Roblox.
Mhm.
And I wasn't home, but he happened to go, I guess he hit something and it went to a porn video, which a lot of these websites have, right? Like
Yeah,
it's clickbait to get them to go
for
over.
sure.
And I got home that night and he was upset and like he was like, "Ah, something happened," and he didn't want to tell me. I'm like, okay, you could tell me anything. Like, I'm not gonna get mad at you. He's like, I clicked on the website, but it was for Roblox. I swear to God, I didn't mean to look at it. And like came up and he was like so scared and nervous. I would be mad. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not your
Yeah.
fault. That's like, thank you for telling me. That's like
Hmm.
that's what people do to do this to you. And so I think that he, thank God, felt comfortable enough to tell me because he lived with something he didn't really want to see at such a young age and was embarrassed he saw it. And a lot of them would just live with like, oh my God, I saw that and I shouldn't have seen that, knowing they shouldn't have seen it because they don't have the words to say what
Exactly.
they saw.
Yes.
So I think having the conversation of things like porn, like this is what's not natural, not normal. This is not going to be like your first time. Like this will
Exactly.
not be your first time. And if a boy is acting like that, he probably is not someone you want to be with. Like that's probably
Exactly.
not someone you want to go like be with if he's acting like you're not enough because he watches too much porn. Because let me tell you, no 14-year-old boy has that much experience that he's like a
Yeah.
rock star either, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then just like, it's this like expectation again put on women of like this is what you're supposed to be like these porn girls who get paid and are right actresses, and it's just, and like they, I don't know, the women just kind of tell me about the feeling like it sucks to be compared to that, right? And it's like, and then they would like pretend things, and I'm like, oh, this is so fucked up. This is so messed up for women. Just like that this is now like another expectation put upon us, and if their parents are not talking to them about it, like it's up to us to have that conversation with these boys. It's like that's bullshit. It just sucks.
I don't think many parents are having that conversation with their
Right.
boys. Like I don't think that actually is coming across, the conversation. And I think it's so great you brought it up. And I think you definitely need to do a book on it because I bet boys anonymously feel a lot of pressure. Like I think that they see these videos and they don't have different representation of what to watch or what to be like because there is a lot of pressure on boys right now in social media, like of how to be masculine and like the bodies, like what do their bodies look like, what do their cheeks look like. And I think it is a really I think we're underestimating the pressure on them too. And
Oh,
I
I
think that
agree.
we need to have the conversations about what does it feel like to not
Mhm.
have been with a girl when
Right.
you're this
Yes.
age, and what does
Right.
it feel like to have the pressure that you all of a sudden have to make sure you get it right and do it well and then get consent while you're doing it. Like there's
So many. Yeah. No, that's great
so
point.
many layers.
There really
when
is.
when do you think, like, in your, is it just an ongoing conversation? Like, are kids just thankful? Because I think you're right, the experts, there's like the actual talk, and then there's the comfortability of them being able to come talk to you when something happens. Like, w- are you cool if your daughter comes to you and is like, I'm ready for sex, and you're like, okay, like what
Um, So no, I'd probably freak the fuck out. But I would be like, take a minute. And I've done this with her a couple times before where I'm like, you know what, just give me a sec. Like let me just process this. And then I'll come and then let's talk about this. And I do have to tell her that often because it's like I tell her this. I'm like, look, girl, I'm like, I only have you because I only have one child. And I'm like, and this stuff is new, especially because I didn't have this talk when I was younger. And I'm like, so sometimes like I need to take a moment to just think through and make sure that like I'm calm and I'm saying the right thing. And I'm like, because I don't want to freak you out. Like I want to make sure that you feel comfortable talking to me about this. So sometimes I just need a minute. So that would probably want to be one of those scenarios where I'd be like, okay, just give me a minute. Like, oh no, my little baby girl,
And
you know?
you know what they do also, and this is like for every parent to listen, they will often talk about it as if it's one of their friends. So
Yes,
like, oh my gosh, so
my friend.
and it's how you react that they're looking for
Yes.
because they're actually gauging your response. They're testing the waters without actually saying it. So if they're like, oh, so and so is having sex, and if you're like, what the like, then they're gonna be like,
Right.
okay, not safe.
Not going to
But
say
if you're
that.
like, wow, like if you are trying, if they really are testing you, so watch out when they begin to talk about their friends. That is one, or someone they know, that is 100% a test of your, it's a
It is.
barometer of your reaction, so they can see how you're going to react.
Oh, 100%. So the funny thing is, since I was interviewing women, these other topics would come up, and I'm like, shit, I didn't talk to my daughter about that, right? So, and Kayla,
Yes.
my daughter knows, right, that I'm doing this interview of the book, and I talked to her about it first. I think you actually had asked me that, and I totally forgot to answer that. My bad. She asked me, or I had talked to her about it first. I'm like, look, I have this idea, and I'm like, I want to make sure you're okay with it because I'm going to put you in it, but I want you to know the importance of this. And she was actually really cool about it, and she gave me ideas. I'm like, okay, what would be a good question I can ask? So I tried to like bring her a part of the process. But now, so I'm interviewing women, and this other thing came, so masturbation came up, right?
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah.
and I'm like, do we ever talk to our daughters about masturbation? No. Do we talk to it about boys that it's a funny thing, like, oh, he's gonna go jack off like all the time? But why do we not talk about it with our daughters? Like, why?
Uh,
Because it's uncomfortable. It's
I
uncomfortable,
know.
right? But it's so sad because it's normal and it's okay. So I was like, so one of the moms had brought it up that she talked to her daughter about it, and I'm like, oh God, I need to do this. I'm like, I didn't do this. So again, my daughter and I were on a walk, right? And I'm like,
She's
so
like, oh God, here we go, another walk. Are you serious, mom? Okay, let's go for our walk.
I know she knows that's the thing. Or when we're driving her to like practice. And so I'm like, okay, I need to talk to you about something. I'm like, again, I should have talked to you about this when I was young. And I'm like smiling while I'm talking because I'm nervous. And I tell her that I'm a little nervous, but I just want you to know, like, this is something I want to talk about. And I'm like, masturbation. I said that and she looked at me like I'm psycho. And I'm like, look, I'm like, I know we haven't talked about this before. I'm like, and I'm like, how it's super joked about with boys, like, oh, they go jack off or like whatever, like it's a
They're in
funny
the
thing.
shower
And I'm
too
like,
long. Like there they go for
exactly.
another shower.
Exactly. And I'm like, it's so normalized with boys, but with girls, it is not talked about. And I'm like, but I want you to know that it's normal. I'm like, I did it when I was young. I'm like, I still do it now. And like to even say that, I'm like, oh my God, right? But I'm like, I still do it now. And I'm like, and it is totally okay. I'm like, it's important for you to actually like explore yourself. I'm like, number one, medically, just to see if anything is off or a little different that you think maybe is uncomfortable. I was like, but two, I'm like, knowing what you like is a really good thing. And I'm like, when you're an adult and you're like actually in a sexual relationship, I'm like, you'll understand a little more. I'm like, I don't want to go into too much detail. And I'm like, but I will once you have a boyfriend and, I can tell you guys are potentially thinking about being together. And I'm like, but it's super important to just know yourself and like know what actually feels good or not. And I'm like waiting for her to say something. She's not saying anything. So I'm like, okay. And I'm like, do you have any questions? She's like, no. I'm like, okay.
Like,
I'm like,
mom,
well,
that's it. We're good. Thank you. Oh my, I, oh my gosh.
did you get
I'm so
nervous with
glad
that?
you had the, yeah, I would be actually 100%. I would be because I mean, it's like, it's how you were raised too, right? Like, it's like,
Yeah,
that was never part of a conversation.
never.
Like, I don't even think girls knew that they could, even though little girls, they do, like
Right.
on, like when you see them, like, it's like they do. And then they're like, don't do that.
Hmm.
So it's like, it is a very, I mean, it really is a profound conversation when you really begin to talk to other moms about like what they're thinking, because it is overwhelming and we don't do it enough. And there's so much that falls on us and you tick so many boxes and then you're like, oh my God, and now there's one more. And
Yes.
I do think on the flip side of this, men also have to be part of the conversation
Yes,
with
yes.
their
There's
sons too, and about, that that's not a realistic representation. And they often joke about women, and they'll make comments
mhm,
about women on TV. And,
yes.
we all, and even if it seems harmless, I think it's really important that we, stop the narrative and don't let those small jokes, like slide when we're hearing it. It's just small things we all have to do. And I think we think it's like this one big conversation, but I think it's constant
No, it's multiple.
conversations.
Yeah,
And
it's
we need people like you to remind us, like, it's normal. And thank God you're talking to other moms, because I think no one feels like really normal about it unless you're a doctor. Like, no one's like, this is
right.
so like, all right, let's have
Exactly.
sex, like Sex Friday, let's
Right,
go.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's why I was just like, I just wanted to know, like, tell me, tell me about when you were a kid, because everything is based from that, like from your own experience. And then, tell me about it, like the first thing you talked to your kid about it and what was missing. And it was just like I said, it's just so inspiring how different people are, how people like make up stories, about the birds and the bees and the storks. And like one mom actually told me that she told her daughter that your pelvis would shatter if you had sex before you were 16 or 18. Like just crazy stuff, right? Because they don't know what to do. Like they're just like coming up with all this shit, which is whatever, but it's just,
Alicia, try watching The Bachelor with your 9-year-old. And
oh
last
God.
night they brought up butt plugs. Butt plugs, okay? So that, what's the most naughty thing you bought? And it's a butt plug. And my one's like, and I'm like, I don't actually know if we go into butt plugs at 9. Like, I'm not sure what we do here. And she's like this, shh, I am trying to watch the show. And I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
oh God, what are we doing right now? Because she can't believe how much they make out. Like, he makes out with everybody within,
Everybody.
like, right away. And she's like, another one? And I'm like, I know, right? And it's just like, and she's like, we need to see the connections. And I was like, oh my God,
I
this is
love it.
actually great. Cause I like
It is great.
Mark's, my husband's like, are we watching this with a 9-year-old? I'm like, I mean, might as well at this point. Like,
She
there's
knows
way
about it. I
worse.
mean, they see it, they're talking about it at school. So it's like if you can make it comfortable, like why not? And then go a step further to your point of like, that's not normal. Right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
right.
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of like, you know what? I'm not sure we're going to tackle butt plugs on a Monday night at 9 p.m. I'm not sure that's where we're going to, like, because I think you can't put your boundaries in. And sometimes I'm not sure she's ready for butt plugs at
Oh,
9.
for
Like,
sure.
I'm just not sure because I think you do have to
Age
look at,
appropriate.
you
Hmm.
do have to go to steps. You can't just
Oh, for
go
sure.
from 0 to 1,000, because that would pardon, you know what I mean? Like, that's above and beyond right there. So that's something maybe she can discover on her
Oh my gosh, I know.
later.
But the thing is like if you give your kid a phone when they're in,
Yeah.
fourth grade and they don't have parental controls, which is astounding how many kids don't have parental controls, even just like the
Oh,
explicit
oh yeah.
content, right? Like
Oh yeah.
explicit content at the minimum. Like if
Oh, oh yeah.
anything comes up and you shut it down and you're like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Like you're too young for that. Like that is what, and they know, and then they know, and then they know like the perception from Google, right? Or their friends. And so it's just, we have such a big opportunity to be first, to just get in there first, right? And teach them like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that's what it is. Like we could be first, but our own like uncomfortableness, scaredness, or naive, whatever you say that word, being naive. Like
Yeah,
I was
naive.
like,
I got that. Yeah, or yeah, you're right. Uncomfortable. Where can everybody get your book? Where can we like? We'll definitely link it down below for the people who are like, I need to read this, because I think you also said, when women share stories, you share ideas, you share real conversations of how to maybe have the conversation, and then you take from what they didn't get. And I think that's so valuable. I actually want to read what the 18 and 19-year-olds wish they had known, because I think that we all obviously could do a better job. So where can we get your book?
yeah. So my book is on Amazon. So the tea, the talk, brave women spilling the tea on the sex talk. So it's on Amazon, and that's a place to get it.
Well, keep us posted when you do the boys. Please do the men and the boys.
I know. I can't wait.
Please. Like, we need that follow up as moms with sons. And I thank you for all that you're doing. And honestly, this has been such a refreshing conversation, because so often we're told what to do. But I love hearing what other moms are doing, because we all need to rely on each other to get through this tumultuous time.
We definitely do. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing. You're absolutely, you guys are both amazing. I really appreciate you guys. Literally been listening since my daughter was younger. So I really, really, really appreciate all the honest conversations.
You're so kind. And I do have to tell parents, warn parents that when you have the sex talk or you begin to talk about it and they're pretty young, they'll look at you and they're like, if they haven't heard about it, they'll look at you and they'll say, do you do that? And you'll be
Hmm.
like, oh my God, yes, you have to be,
You do. You
they
do.
look at
But
you.
yes.
Do you do that with the dad? Yep. Yep. Like tonight, I don't like that. Okay. Get ready, guys.
Get ready. I know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.